My wife claims she loves me but isn't in love anymore while exploring feelings for a coworker. I don't want to rip our family apart, she says, but also admits the feelings for him are stronger. Can we rebuild or is divorce inevitable? Let me begin by stating that this is a lengthy post since there is much to explain. I will strive to keep it as concise as possible and divide it into sections. I believe the objective is to remain united, repair our marriage, and ultimately find happiness like anyone else. However, I am feeling lost as the situation is extremely confusing. I think we both still possess something that binds us together, and we want to reawaken the passion and salvage our marriage. Yet I also contemplate whether it might be better to divorce and end things completely. Currently, I am a 32-year-old male, and my wife is a 29-year-old female. We are separated, with her residing at her mother's house while I remain in our home. I am estranged from my family, have nowhere else to go, and financial constraints have played a significant role in her living with her family. We have 3 children aged 8, 5, and 2, and we have been together for nearly 11 years, married since 2019. We have been separated for approximately 1 to 1.5 months now. This is not a legal separation. Initially, it was meant to provide space, prevent arguments, and determine whether we would pursue divorce. In the first couple of weeks post-separation, we were distant and cold, which was expected. Shortly afterward, she expressed a desire to pursue individual therapy, but not marriage counseling, as she believes it will not work and is too costly. She wants to focus on improving herself and our marriage. She is frightened of returning home and rekindling the cycle of conflict, stating that she loves me but is not in love with me. There is a spark between us, but it feels minuscule. She mentioned that the primary issue is managing our separation and sharing the children, but she does not wish to tear our family apart either, as we still desire similar things, growing old together and finding happiness. A few weeks ago, she looked at apartments and considered obtaining divorce papers from our local courthouse. Ultimately, she chose not to pursue divorce paperwork. She explained that she could not afford an apartment on her own and lacked anyone to share expenses with. After calming down and discussing everything with her therapist, she realized that what we have built together and our family means too much to her. She wants to give it one last try. We have been utilizing the Paired Couples app daily to reconnect while working on self-improvement with our therapists. She also agreed to attend bi-weekly sessions with my therapist for informal marriage counseling. We communicate in person, via calls, and through text daily about matters beyond just the children. Recently, we have started expressing our love for one another again, sharing kisses and holding hands. However, she appropriately noted that she has established barriers and boundaries regarding deeper intimacy at this time. As of now, she is still not living at home. Just prior to our separation, I discovered that she had confided in a friend about having a crush on a coworker. However, she downplayed it, affirming that she is committed to her husband and family, attributing this crush to problems we were facing at home. For the past few weeks, we had been doing well in our efforts to reconnect, focus on individual growth, and enhance our marriage, with her stating the intention of coming home and staying together. However, today she revealed significant information. She still has feelings for the coworker, and they are reportedly stronger than before. She insists that he is unaware of her feelings, stating that their interactions have been strictly work-related as they both work at our local school. Nevertheless, she often omits the complete truth for fear of hurting me or provoking arguments, as she puts it. She expressed a genuine desire to explore whatever relationship may exist with him, while simultaneously wanting me and our family, creating confusion and difficulty. We had an extensive discussion about him, our marriage, and everything surrounding us. She informed me that she is choosing me and our family, committing to suppressing those thoughts and feelings, even though it makes her feel unwell to do so, and she fears that eventually her feelings will spill over in an uncontrolled manner to the coworker. To me, it appeared as if she reluctantly consented to this arrangement. I scheduled an emergency session with my therapist for tomorrow and invited her to join in order to navigate these issues and receive an impartial perspective, which she accepted. It feels like a continuous cycle of wanting me and our family, fluctuating to uncertainty about her desires, then wondering what else may be out there, and ultimately returning to us. I feel exhausted, and I am sure she is as well. As a man, I do not believe we have explored every possible option yet. I am not ready to give up on either our family or her. However, I also recognize that I do not own my wife and will respect her decision, regardless of what she ultimately decides. I am scared and confused, but I am also at peace with her absence. I love her deeply, and I am horrified to think that my actions and behaviors led us to this point. Yet I want to salvage our marriage and find happiness through time, commitment, and hard work, elements we have both acknowledged we still desire to pursue together. Our relationship timeline began when we got together at a young age. She was 18 and I was 21 in 2014. We progressed very quickly without truly dating or getting to know one another, doing everything in reverse. Within a year, we were living together. By 2016, we were expecting our first child. We separated in April or May of 2017 and reconciled in November or December of the same year. By 2019, we welcomed our second son, and in January 2023, our daughter was born. The primary issues in our marriage include a lack of trust, poor communication, resentment, dishonesty, and saying hurtful things during arguments. Regarding my personal issues, I fully acknowledge that I was a poor partner and might still be in some respects due to my past actions throughout our relationship. I have matured significantly and have been undergoing counseling for quite some time to continue progressing. In the beginning, I admit that I was self-centered and lacked the capacity to love or care for anyone other than myself. This behavior stemmed from a tumultuous childhood, which included a mother who did not want us, periods in and out of foster care, abuse, and an alcoholic father who was violent. Eventually, I entered foster care, moved frequently, and was adopted by a severely abusive family where I was mistreated and belittled. I moved out at the age of 16 to live with a friend and have been independent ever since until meeting Brittany. While this is not an excuse for my behavior, it does provide context for the roots of my issues. I developed a pattern of frequently changing jobs, creating financial problems, especially once we had our first child. Additionally, I had a tendency to suppress my emotions, which would eventually lead to explosive outbursts where I said hurtful things without regard for who I was harming, one of the major issues in our relationship. I often neglected my responsibilities, sleeping in while she tended to our son and failing to assist during nighttime feedings. I prioritized gaming over maintaining the household, taking her for granted, making her feel more like a mother than a partner. During our arguments, I resorted to name-calling and saying hurtful things without considering the consequences. Since then, I have matured, taken on more responsibility at home, assisted with the children, secured a stable job, and eliminated gaming from my life. Nevertheless, we still argue, struggle with communication, and do not address the real issues directly, often pushing things under the rug and continuing to say hurtful things. These are all areas we are both addressing in counseling, discussing thoroughly, and working diligently toward resolving. As for her, she is genuinely a wonderful person, but I believe many of her issues stem from our relationship problems. She is easily upset, irritated, or annoyed. Even something as simple as misplacing her shoes can provoke an outburst. Typically, she directs her frustration at me, our children, or even the dog at times. When she requires my assistance and is feeling this way, she approaches me with a heightened sense of urgency and annoyance, demanding that I abandon whatever task I am involved in and address her needs immediately. She also struggles with communication, often providing half-truths or white lies about her feelings while revealing the full truth to her friends and family. She is unable to let go of the past, including hurts that we have resolved together as a team. She has a tendency to hold past mistakes over my head and use them against me. Additionally, she frequently dismisses my feelings and viewpoints, claiming that what I feel is simply in my head and does not reflect reality. She is reluctant to apologize unless prompted. During conflicts or discussions aimed at resolving our issues, even when we approach them appropriately, she tends to shut down, stonewall, and refuses to acknowledge her own part in the problems we face. If you require more information, please ask rather than assuming. Do we have a chance to stay together and save our marriage? Story 2. At 20, I lost my family, truck, and first love in a whirlwind of chaos. Maybe you shouldn't live there anymore, my dad said as everything crumbled. Finally, in the infantry, I'm stronger, but the memories haunt me. Will I ever feel normal again? Full disclosure, this is my true and real experience that I have dealt with and continue to deal with in my life. However, the formatting was done by artificial intelligence since I am not a skilled writer. I do not know if this will be seen. I am not writing this for acknowledgement or sympathy. I simply feel the need to express it somewhere people might understand, somewhere I can be honest without sugarcoating anything. I know I am young 20 male, but I still have my own issues. If you read the entire piece, thank you. If not, I understand. It is lengthy. But it is my life and I need to relieve myself of this burden. Back in grade 11, I entered my first serious relationship. She meant everything to me, funny, smart, supportive, and beautiful. My first love, my best friend, my partner in all things. We were inseparable. We communicated constantly and spent almost every day together. She became my support system when difficult times emerged. My family life had been stable. My parents were together, we lived on a farm, I had satisfactory grades, and I played sports. It was a relatively secure situation. However, in December of 2022, right after Christmas, everything changed. My mother moved out. My parents had been arguing for a while, but this particular dispute shattered everything. She packed her belongings and left. I stayed with my father on the farm, but I still visited my mother in town. When she left, I suddenly had to assume all of her responsibilities. I was milking cows, feeding animals, taking care of the chickens, which I truly despised, and attempting to keep everything running while still fulfilling my role as a student. It was overwhelming, but I did not complain. I simply continued. Fast forward to a few days after my birthday in 2023. I was sitting in class when I received a text from my girlfriend, "We need to talk." That was the moment everything began to fall apart. I experienced my first panic attack. I could not breathe, my heart raced, and my vision blurred. I left class and went to my grandmother's house in an attempt to calm down. Later that day, she ended our relationship. There were no warnings, no prior indications. Just like that, it was over. We had recently gone suit shopping for graduation with my mother and uncle. We were texting throughout the day and calling every night. And then it was finished. I was utterly devastated. On my way out, I had to walk past her father, and it was excruciatingly embarrassing. She claimed she still wanted to remain friends. I agreed, but I was uncertain of what I was saying. I ended up driving an hour to another town where one of my friends had graduated. He tried to keep me distracted, buying me snacks, drinks, and even a dab pen, even though I had never really smoked cannabis. I just needed something to numb the pain. I began calling people, trying to feel better: my uncle, my father, my mother, my friends. Everyone attempted to offer support. For a while it worked. However, the anxiety, the anger, and the confusion did not disappear. I became unstable, smiling one moment and crying or furious the next. I could not sleep. I tried melatonin, cannabis, and everything else I could think of. Even indica strains provided little relief. I was unable to get prescription sleeping medication. I was fortunate if I managed 6 hours of sleep in an entire week. Then came the party. My father allowed me to hold one at the farm. I drank with my friends, trying to feel normal. What I did not realize at the time was that my father had become involved with substances. He was grieving the death of his grandfather, and I suppose that was his way of coping. We ended up in an argument. He was high, I was enraged at the world, and it escalated to physical confrontation. The following morning, he suggested that perhaps I should not live there anymore. So I packed what I could into my truck and moved in with my mother and grandmother in town. I left everything I owned on the farm behind. It was manageable, but nothing felt familiar. I was not sleeping 1 hour here, maybe 2 there. I tried everything, but nothing worked. Then I attended another party at a friend's house, just the guys. After one beer, my ex-girlfriend arrived with her friends, invited through someone I did not even know. Panic attack. Again, I left, drove away, and pulled over onto an approach to try to calm down. A police officer found me, lights flashing. He checked in on me. I told him the truth. I was panicking and just needed a place to breathe. He administered a breathalyzer test. I was on zero tolerance. One beer, I exceeded the limit. I lost my license for 2 months. My truck was towed, more financial strain, more isolation. I could not go anywhere. Everything in my area was spread out, no public transportation. I felt trapped. Then came the final blow. My mother borrowed my truck without informing me and ended up getting into an accident, totaling it, my cherished vehicle. My 2005 Chevrolet Silverado. Leather GFX seats, 5.3 L V8 engine, subwoofers, ground effects, DVD touchscreen deck, 22-inch rims, aftermarket exhaust gone, no insurance coverage, no funds to replace it. I still managed to graduate. I received rides to school and eventually regained my license. And at my graduation party, my ex-girlfriend appeared once again. She told me she still loved me before making out with another guy in front of everyone. I lost control. I wanted to confront him. My friends held me back, reminding me that he was not to blame. I directed my frustration at a wall instead and ended up bruising my hand quite badly. Nevertheless, at least I did not end up in jail. They advised me, if she wants to be a certain way, let her. You could attract 10 girls without trying. She lowered her standards, you raised yours. Harsh words, but I appreciated their attempt to support me. Following that, I moved to the city for university, pursuing civil engineering. I thought I would start anew. I struggled to find a job. I submitted my resume everywhere: gas stations, Best Buy, vape shops, restaurants. I made it to interviews but was never hired. I could barely afford rent, let alone food. I subsisted on ramen, craft dinner, and canned soup. My insomnia worsened. The only time I could sleep was after consuming alcohol, but I could not afford alcohol unless my friends brought some with them on their visits. University proved challenging. I transitioned from a class of 16 students to enormous lecture halls, attempting to learn from PowerPoint presentations and professors with thick accents. Quantum physics being taught off a whiteboard left me feeling lost. Then I contracted mononucleosis and jaundice. I ended up in the hospital, losing 22 pounds in a week. I missed classes and lost motivation. I tried to hook up with people simply to feel something. I sought therapy but could not afford it, and the university's waitlist was months long. Ultimately, I reached my lowest point. One night, unable to bear the pressure any longer, I found opioids in the cupboard from my roommate's previous surgery. I attempted to end my life, but clearly I failed. I woke up and I realized something had to change. I applied to join the infantry. I submitted all the required documentation through my government's website: medical records, interviews, and tests. Within 5 months, I was on my way to basic training. For the first time in a long while, I felt good about myself. I successfully completed basic training. Then I proceeded to my DP1. I was still recovering from an ankle injury from my initial attempt, and on the first day of my second try, I sustained a level 2 sprain on the same ankle. However, I did not allow that to deter me. I persevered through every single day, overcoming the pain and doubt. I made it. I am now officially in the infantry. And I love it. I love my job. I love waking up each day and challenging myself to improve. I appreciate the environment, the people, the structure, and the discipline. I feel stronger, sharper, and more capable than I ever have before. I finally feel as though I have achieved something. Yet I still do not feel as I think I should. My anxiety continues to flare up. If I see a photo of my ex or if someone mentions her, my heart races. I freeze. I experience that same dread I felt the day she ended our relationship. I am unsure if it is because she marked the beginning of my downfall or if there is still a part of me that remains trapped in that time. I just want to feel normal. I want to live my life and allow her to live hers. I desire the ability to walk past her in public without feeling as though I am going to faint. I want peace. So Reddit, what should I do? Should I talk to someone? Is this something I can work through independently, or am I simply being weak? I do not know, but I needed to express this. Thank you for reading. Please feel free to be honest if needed. Story 3. After 20 years of marriage, I'm suffocating under financial strain while my husband, once my partner, has become a distant figure who rarely lifts a finger. How can't you see my pain in my eyes? I wonder, as my house crumbles and my mental health plummets. Is this love or trauma? It is difficult to determine where to start. I am a 44-year-old female married to a 48-year-old male. We have been together since I was 16, with the exception of approximately 16 months when I attended college. I will delve into the current issues and support my statements with nearly 3 decades of history. My husband has been unemployed, except for a 6-month period about 1.5 years ago, during which he was paid incredibly less than his capabilities, since our fourth and final child was born 10 years ago. This has undeniably been our most significant ongoing conflict. He lost a job that I believe he was proud of, as it was a respected position within a company that came after some prior family business issues, and he had no degree. The unexpected loss crushed him, especially after grappling with other issues that made him feel inadequate throughout his life. Since I could potentially earn more, it was decided that he would stay home until the little ones were in school full-time. This meant we would avoid childcare costs by having a parent care for them. I felt compelled into this decision, which deviated from what we had previously discussed, and I buried a significant amount of anger and disappointment when I transitioned from part-time nursing, primarily focused on benefits and pension, to a full-time position that stressed me immensely due to significant overtime. This decision was necessary to support a family of 6 in a high cost-of-living area. Unless one is a nurse, the sheer workload difference is more than triple. I felt I had no choice but to return early from maternity leave, which marked the beginning of my resentment, particularly because I was leaving my youngest child, the last chance to soak up the snuggles. Transitioning to full-time work altered how our household operated, placing the majority of responsibilities on him. Over the last decade, I have witnessed my once cozy and humble home fall apart little by little, transforming into the neighborhood's house of shame, which I find embarrassing. My husband dismisses these concerns by saying it does not matter what others think, as they do not understand what we have endured, but everyone faces challenges. I always envisioned a welcoming home for my children and their friends, filled with laughter instead of retreating into bedrooms. I used to be a highly involved mother, active in various extracurricular activities, on top of school matters, and advocating for my eldest child's needs all the way through graduation, just 2 years ago volunteering to help with various things. Now I struggle to manage even one responsibility and feel like I am only going through the motions, which frustrates me both with myself and him. As a result, I feel disconnected from my children's lives, and I know they have expressed feeling overlooked. I have never been a helicopter parent. I simply come from a background of neglect and have always wanted to guide them toward making their own decisions while ensuring they have a supportive figure. I believe they perceive the stark difference in my involvement, and my younger 2 children, for whom I have worked full-time throughout their lives, have been completely deprived. It seems my husband fails to notice how deeply this affects me, leading me to wonder how he cannot see the pain in my eyes and the slow deterioration of my spirit beside him. In short, during the first 5 years, I resorted to various substances to manage my chaotic life while suppressing my feelings, and I did well at maintaining my position while earning nearly twice my salary through overtime, which kept us financially comfortable. However, the last 5 years have been filled with one overwhelming issue after another. First and foremost was being a nurse during the COVID-19 pandemic. I would not wish the impact of that experience on anyone, feeling as though I could harm my own family while grappling with immense loss and complete overload. I do not believe I will ever fully recover from that experience, which led me to question everything I once valued about a profession I had long respected. In addition, shortly before 2020, I experienced a traumatic death in my family, which awakened many unresolved issues from my intensely traumatic childhood. My husband also has a relatively traumatic childhood, and I do not think either of us had the coping skills necessary to support one another during such critical times. This was followed by a devastating car accident that left me nearly bedridden for months, out of work for nearly a year. Remember, the financial responsibility fell entirely on me while I was contending with severe pain and undergoing various therapies, both physical and mental, all of which were costly. The only silver lining was the potential settlement from these incidents. As the years passed and debt accumulated, my mental health struggled to maintain the facade I had created to function effectively, a facade supported by substances that I relied on to manage my responsibilities, all while silently suffering because I seemed to have the perfect husband, an angelic spouse that everyone adored, who was actively engaged with his children and caring for his wife. No one could see the increasing chaos behind closed doors that was leading to further issues for all of us. I was jeopardizing my well-being in many ways and could not recognize the person I had become. The shame I carry from that period of my life will haunt me indefinitely. I was in a position where I needed to support all of us, yet I could not keep up with rising costs as expenses continued to grow with our children's ages. Gradually, I pleaded with him to assume more leadership within our family and financial responsibilities, allowing my distressed mind the opportunity to heal. I genuinely believe I experienced two mental breakdowns during this time. I have stated multiple times that if he was not employed by a certain date, I would need to reconsider our situation, yet I never acted on it. I love him for who he is, not who I hope he will become, and I know he is struggling as well. Furthermore, I have not always been the best partner to him, and at times I feel responsible for his inability to provide for our family. I am aware that I may not have been as kind as I should have been over the last decade when approaching these discussions. If you're still reading, I truly appreciate it, and I am getting to my question. I could easily elaborate for another 100 paragraphs, but it would all be more of the same. Regarding the settlement I mentioned, it did come through, and I could have used it to rebuild my life. However, while I was mentally breaking down from the challenges I faced and desperately needed empathy and support, my husband chose to sit beside me on the couch, mostly withdrawn and sleeping, doing nothing, ignoring the mail, neglecting to repair the various issues around us, failing to pay bills, and allowing the house to fall into disrepair to such an extent that I cringe at the thought of anyone visiting. Although I have engaged in various therapies over the last 2 years and gained a different level of clarity than ever before, there are days when I manage to accomplish what needs to be done and feel my life improving, while on other days I find myself feeling so low that I am at a loss for what to do. He has become irritable and frequently yells at the children. The weight he places on them and the manner in which our household functions since my return to full-time work after hitting rock bottom is distressing. He often reminds me of his difficult father, which is unattractive to me. Yet, I do not know how to manage this situation while working. I am exhausted by his refusal to contribute financially, which means the money we received barely helped us get back on our feet temporarily. It provided a reliable car and assisted with my therapies, allowing for a much-needed mental reprieve to prevent my overwhelming despair. I have openly admitted to him that I struggle with finances and budgeting, but he does not even attempt to sit down with me to create any form of plan. He remains passive and does nothing to improve his situation or ours. I feel an overwhelming sense of responsibility to resolve everything, as our financial status is in dire straits right now. Compounding matters, I now feel trapped. Everything is lost and we are back to being financially broke. I sense that my nearly adult teenage children view me as a failure who has ruined my life, which feels somewhat accurate. I am unsure what steps to take. Our home is dismal. I cannot save any money because he takes my card and spends beyond our budget. He sleeps most of the day. I live in such disorder and poor routines that it is difficult for anyone, especially someone struggling with mental health, to cope effectively. I feel as though I am being subjected to emotional abuse and that I am being used, yet I think he loves me. Honestly, I no longer know what to believe. Story 4. After a year of heartbreak and emotional neglect, I realized my boyfriend M, 21, was never the partner I needed. Watching him flirt with a cashier at a concert sent me over the edge. I always put his needs before mine, I thought, until I saw myself wasting away. Now I'm tearing away to heal. Am I being cruel or finally standing up for myself? Any opinions or inputs? I do not know where to start, but I feel the need to discuss this. Can I write and possibly receive some feedback from someone? I did not fully articulate everything since it's a lot, so I will try my best to condense it. I have been in a relationship with my boyfriend for 1 year and 4 months. However, I would not consider it as such since he emotionally cheated on me last year from February or March until the end of June and the beginning of July. So technically, we have been together for 10 months. During that time, when he had another woman in his heart, I noticed signs indicating he was not being loyal, but I gave him the benefit of the doubt countless times, believing it was acceptable for him to have friends of the opposite gender. A significant red flag that I should have recognized, which I should have addressed, was when I voluntarily picked up shifts to work with him. He would ignore me. He would prefer to talk and spend time with a specific coworker repeatedly when I picked up shifts to work with him. The reason I picked up those shifts was because we had different schedules and I also attended school. Since he would be getting off work as I was headed to school, spending time together was challenging and the only time we could connect was during work. When he ignored me, I would become visibly upset, but he would not notice until much later, which seemed pointless. However, he insisted that she was just a friend, so I felt obligated to accept that because I did not want to appear crazy or toxic by getting jealous over him speaking with other females. I consistently gave him the benefit of the doubt whenever I sensed something was off, but this only came back to hurt me. I am not going to criticize him or anything because he never yelled at me, hit me, or abused me in any way, but he was not a good boyfriend regarding the responsibilities that come with that role. The negative aspects outweighed the positive ones. There were instances where he made me feel unwanted, prompting me to cry myself to sleep. There were also times when I sought comfort, but he failed to provide it. This is why I hesitated to turn to him with my issues. He would not comfort me when I needed him. I communicated my feelings to him, but he explained that his anxiety interfered and he did not know how to comfort someone. I believe emotionally he did not provide what I needed, which is essential in a relationship. However, I continued to give him the benefit of the doubt because I love this man. I feel like he is more of a physical person and not very emotionally in tune. I believe I excel in both areas, yet when it came to me, the most crucial element I valued was reciprocity, which he offered only in a physical sense. After discovering his infidelity, I was distraught and guarded my heart by numbing myself to the situation and not fully processing what had occurred. I felt like I experienced only 10% of the emotions I should have felt at that time. When I found out, my boyfriend wanted to resolve things immediately, but I was too upset. Ultimately, we discussed it, but his explanations felt insincere. There was no valid justification for why he did what he did or whether I provoked him to cheat. I did not leave him right away because I genuinely loved him and could not fathom walking away, but I was blinded by love. I always vowed to end a relationship if my partner cheated in any form because I believed they would likely repeat the behavior, even if they claimed to change. Yet reflecting on it now, I realize it was foolish not to voice my feelings. I took about 2 weeks to think, and I acknowledge it was my fault, but during that time I could not process anything fully. I remained numb and unable to confront the pain. In October, I permitted my boyfriend to move in. Yes, this was foolish on my part. I now realize this. It has been approximately 3 weeks since my body and mind have allowed me to process what happened 8 months ago, his betrayal and generally how he treated and made me feel. Again, he never physically harmed me. However, I have come to the realization that I should have ended things 8 months ago. It pains me to admit this, but I believe this situation has been holding me back and has consistently occupied my thoughts. Throughout this year, all I could think about was the possibility of him cheating again. I worry that any girl who offers him attention will lead him to stray, and I will end up discovering it months later. I constantly remind him of what he did, clarifying that I could never forgive him, but he seems to accept his actions. In a way, he appears to want everything to simply go away, but I cannot do that. It also makes me feel terrible because there are days when I act coldly towards him, ignoring him and being short with him out of anger regarding his infidelity. Although I feel he deserves my frustration, I do not want to be unkind to him because the look on his face when I am harsh saddens me. Yet it does not compare to how he made me feel during those months of betrayal and even afterward when I discovered the truth. I am somewhat sorry for my behavior, but also not entirely. A triggering moment that prompted me to officially tell him to return home happened the week before spring break. He displayed behaviors similar to when he was unfaithful. He began to go to bed early and woke up extremely late, and by that time I was already tired and would go to sleep. Next, he slept on the floor for no apparent reason, despite there being space on the bed. When I asked him why, he could not provide an answer. When I slept over at his house during the time he was unfaithful, he would also frequently sleep and avoid being close to me, such as cuddling or even just being in the same vicinity. I gave the same excuse at the time. He was tired, but I was tired too. I always made an effort to stay awake and spend time with him, even when we lived apart. I would stay up until he started work to send him comforting messages just to keep in touch. Yet when it came to reciprocation, he did not put in the same effort, which made me feel foolish for my dedication because I was then exhausted. At that time, I believed it was worth it, but I now see that he did not feel the same way. He also began to pick at his skin more. He does this when he is anxious, and I brought it up, but he dismissed it as a habit of his. I did not buy into this excuse, so I pressed further, but he remained unresponsive, causing me to feel upset, which he was aware of. Then came the day of the concert. I did not genuinely want to go because I was on my period and mentally I was just not okay. I was prepared to attribute all my feelings that week to my period, but as 3 weeks have passed, I still feel the same, contradicting that assertion. I went to the concert, which was enjoyable overall, but I regretted attending because it was not fun. Essentially, we had agreed to abstain from drinking for a month, but on our own terms, he drank excessively and became drunk. He does not handle alcohol well since he struggles to recognize when to stop, and he was tipsy throughout the event. He basically ignored me because I was quiet, making me feel like a random person accompanying him rather than a girlfriend at the concert. He escorted me to the bathroom, and then I accompanied him to get food since he wanted to sober up. The cashier was a beautiful woman. Although she was just doing her job, the way my boyfriend spoke to her made me feel as if he were flirting. She did not reciprocate, but since I have not seen him intoxicated in public often, I do not know if he behaves in a flirtatious manner when drunk. It hurt me to see him speak to her as if he were flirting. Afterwards, I became extremely upset and decided to mimic his behavior by sleeping on the floor, which led to him getting angry. I did this for about the same duration he did, but I was simply too upset, wanting time alone. Therefore, I told him to go back home until he could return. I still have not invited him back because I have decided to end our relationship. I do not want to continue hurting him or experiencing pain myself, so I believe it is best if we part ways. While I want him to feel the same pain I do, I feel that would be too cruel, and I do not want to hold on to him or vice versa, simply because I do not want to be unkind or hurt his feelings. I am hurting too, and even considering this decision is painful, but I feel it is in the best interest of both of us. I do not believe that in the future I can meet his needs because I will have too much accumulated anger or a sense of upset to be the girlfriend he requires. I realize now that he cannot be the boyfriend I need either. Even if we attempted to work things out, I doubt we would grow as individuals or as a couple. I recognize that I deserve better, but I realize too late, and now I must take action on what I should have done initially, prioritize my needs over my partner's. Am I the problem? Is it cruel of me to do this to him? Can I please receive some feedback? I know it is a lengthy post and I apologize, but if you have read this far, I genuinely appreciate it. Story 5. After blocking my toxic ex-best friend Maggie, F22, I found myself banned from her workplace. You know why, the employee sneered. Turns out secrets and lies between friends can lead to unexpected drama. How did I go from besties to persona non grata so fast? I F22 stopped communicating with my best friend of 10 years in early 2024. Maggie and I were somewhat on and off friends during the last few years of our friendship. There's a lot of backstory regarding why we stopped talking that is honestly quite specific and personal. But the summary is that she began dating my other friend Christy Wright after Christy ended her relationship with her ex Lily. I wanted to maintain my friendship with Lily, but Christy informed me that I could not. Christy and Maggie gradually alienated me from spending time with them, behaving immaturely, picking fights with me, and being passive-aggressive about many issues. Eventually, I had a conversation with Maggie, inquiring about what was wrong. She ultimately apologized and told me that she and Christy should have communicated with me more. She then asked me not to disclose to Christy that she had told me this, but she secretly expressed her anger about other matters unrelated to Maggie and shared those with me. None of these issues held any real significance, and I was mainly confused by them. I promised to refrain from discussing it with Christy until she broached the subject, and Maggie agreed to encourage Christy to talk to me. Shortly thereafter, Christy and Maggie both ceased communication, not texting or speaking to me for several days, even breaking our streaks and stopping the sending of any TikToks, Reels, and so forth, which was extremely out of character for them. I reached out to Christy a couple of times to ask what was going on, but she left my messages unanswered. Maggie evaded my questions and feigned ignorance as well. Finally, I asked Christy again, and she told me that she was upset about something else that was trivial and specific, which did not even register on my radar and did not impact her in any way. I replied to her in a much kinder manner than I needed to, apologizing profusely and asking what she required from me, because in her message she requested space but did not elaborate on what that entailed. I also sought clarification to avoid making her feel uncomfortable or causing her further distress. She left my message unread for several hours and did not respond. At this point, I reached my limit. I had just recently reconnected with Christy after several years of silence, and as I mentioned earlier, Maggie and I had been on and off for a while. I began to feel as though this was the conclusion of their chapter in my life and chose to block both of them for good. I sent them both a message stating that for the sake of my mental health, I needed to distance myself from my friendships with them, but I wished both of them well in their relationship and their lives. Within minutes, Maggie texted someone close to me, whose house I was currently at, and started spreading many lies about me. I was stunned. We were 21 years old at that time. This felt like immature high school drama. I instructed them not to entertain Maggie's claims and they defended me, eventually removing both Maggie and Christy from their contacts as well. A couple of weeks later, I reached out to Lily and apologized for suddenly stopping communication with her. I explained everything that Christy had said happened, and we realized there were numerous discrepancies between what Christy had been telling me and what she had been communicating to Lily. Essentially, everything we had thought we knew about her was somewhat different, if not entirely. Even the smallest details, such as childhood memories or events from high school, including her dating Lily, as well as issues relating to mental health and personality traits. We grew incredibly close, and to this day we remain very good friends. As I was rekindling my friendship with Lily, Christy began appearing at my workplace. During our friendship, she had insisted that she only frequented that chain because I was employed there, wanting to come and support me, so her showing up and making her purchases in a way that ensured interaction with me felt peculiar. Whenever I prepared her orders, I purposely made them extra perfect, and my coworkers recognized her and treated her with exceptional kindness. She stopped coming for a while, but then she started showing up several days in a row to the extent that multiple coworkers texted me the same day about it if I was not working. A month or two before I left that store, this behavior ceased. I relocated to the area where Maggie resided a few months after we stopped being friends. Around the same time, Christy stopped visiting, and discovered that I was only 10 minutes away from one of my favorite places that I had found through Maggie, which used to require a 30-minute trek for me. I was thrilled and brought Lily along after running some errands together. Upon entering, I quickly realized that Maggie was now employed there. She had been unemployed for several months when we ceased contact, so I had no idea she would be there. I felt incredibly overwhelmed since I had not anticipated seeing her, so I panicked and ran back to my car, which made Maggie appear very smug. Lily followed me to ensure I was okay, then went back inside to purchase what I had intended to buy. A month or two later, I returned to the store with Lily and our other two roommates. I suggested that I could quickly run inside by myself and then we could continue with our evening plans. We parked and Maggie was outside the front door with one of her coworkers. They both immediately entered and I followed shortly after. Maggie lingered by the front near the window while her coworker assisted me at the counter. Upon returning to my car, Lily informed me that Maggie had been peeking out the window and taking photos of her and my vehicle. After that, they all stopped accompanying me. This was a place I genuinely enjoyed, and I did not want to avoid going there since it sold something I frequently used for pain and anxiety management. I continued to visit, usually in pairs to help ease my anxiety about potentially seeing Maggie. But when I went alone, I would engage in friendly conversations with the employees and try to avoid Maggie as much as possible. Months went by and the employees started to treat me poorly, but I dismissed it because I only visited once every week, 2 weeks, or even 3 weeks, and it was not a significant issue since Maggie was only present 50% of the time. Ultimately, about 7 months after I returned as a regular customer, I entered the store again with moral support, and as I walked through the door, Maggie was directly behind it. She exclaimed, "Oh, sorry, I thought it was locked," and sprinted to the back of the store. The friend who accompanied me said they had seen her exit through a door in that area. We had been there a few days prior but had underestimated our visit, so we returned, and on that previous occasion, Maggie had seen us and retreated to the back before we could reach the counter, so we thought nothing of it. Therefore, we simply ignored it and approached the counter to complete our purchase. The employee at the register had a profoundly unprofessional expression, and before we could even begin to make a purchase, informed us that she would sell to me this one last time. But due to problems between me and her coworker, I was banned from patronizing that store in the future. I inquired as to why, and she simply replied, "I think you know why." This infuriated me because I genuinely did not. There was a considerable history between Christy and me as well as Maggie and me, but I had never done anything that warranted being expelled from being a customer at any establishment. I responded that I genuinely did not understand why, as I had always been respectful and kind while shopping, and had never bothered Maggie or behaved in any manner to make her uncomfortable whenever I was in the store. I was just a customer. If they were genuinely curious, they could review the camera footage. I will admit that I raised my voice a bit toward the end of my statement, but I added that Maggie's girlfriend had done the same at my workplace, and I never made an issue of it as it was unwarranted. I emphasized that I never visited that store for Maggie, that I had not even known she worked there when I moved nearby, and that I returned simply because it was the best quality product I could find in my area. The employee appeared extremely condescending and informed me that she could try to discuss it with management again and see, but I interrupted her and said I did not wish to come back if it was going to be that unprofessional. I told my friend we were leaving and we walked out. I realized there is a significant amount of context omitted, several years of personal issues that I would prefer not to disclose on the internet as they are quite heavy: abuse, assault, etc. but I simply wanted to vent what I could and see what people think, I suppose. Story 6. Pregnant girlfriend ODs, I thought she was dead. At 22, I left her to get clean, but she used our abortion money for drugs instead. Now, after almost losing her, I'm torn between love and the fear that we're too broken to be parents. How do I save her and us? My girlfriend is 6 months pregnant. She overdosed last night and I found her. She survived, but it has really left me feeling anxious. She appeared lifeless. I cannot unsee it. I have never witnessed an overdose before. She is upset with me because I left her a few months ago to get clean. I am also an addict. I was not an addict until I met her, but it is my fault I became this way. I only used drugs for 2 years, but it has already nearly ruined my entire life. I have been arrested twice, dropped out of college, been expelled from a college sports team, and harmed many people in relationships. After my second arrest, I was sentenced to a rehabilitation program, but I reunited with her as soon as I completed it and began using drugs again almost immediately. I am 22 years old and have already been arrested twice and gone through rehabilitation twice. She discovered she was pregnant about 4 months ago. At that time, we were both still using drugs. I remember thinking that we needed to stop using drugs immediately, but instead I decided to use even more drugs to try to escape the problem and avoid facing what I really should do. She mentioned that she wanted to have an abortion. I did not know how to feel about it. I am not against abortion, but I understood why she needed to have one, and that was what troubled me more. She needed to have one because we were and are addicts who should not have a child. This made me so depressed that I used even more drugs since addicts can easily find any excuse. I spent about 2 weeks gathering money for the abortion. In our area, there are 2 appointments necessary to obtain an abortion. The first appointment involves an ultrasound, and then there is essentially a waiting period before you can return for the actual abortion. She said she would attend the first appointment, but she did not want me to accompany her. She felt that if I were there and saw our baby on the screen, she might decide against going through with it. I left the apartment before her scheduled appointment. I returned around the time she was supposed to be at that appointment. Instead, she was there, and she had used the money meant for the abortion to buy drugs. She began to say that she could not go through with the abortion, that it was our baby, and she could not kill our baby. At the time, I felt that this was a very bad idea, yet I also felt deeply in love with her and wanted to have this baby too. I was under the influence. We decided that the next morning we would start using less. We would be responsible. However, we were then evicted from her apartment due to being several months behind on rent. I suppose it was our apartment at that point, but it was really hers, and I had moved in after quitting school. What followed was 2 weeks of staying with anyone who would take us in, and during those 2 weeks, I realized I could not continue living this way. I was able to have enough clarity for a moment to recognize that we could not have a baby and continue living like this. I returned to my parents' home and informed them that she was pregnant. God bless my parents, as they immediately welcomed me home that night and cared for me through days of withdrawal, literally cleaning up after me and staying with me 24/7, even after I said some truly horrible things when they would not allow me to leave when I decided I could not endure the pain of withdrawal any longer. They got me into a rehabilitation program out of state, and I was genuinely willing to go. When I left the rehabilitation program after 30 days, I returned to my parents' house. I had been out for not even a month. I attempted to persuade my girlfriend to seek help. She always claims she will do it tomorrow or next week, but she never follows through. She felt hurt that I left her to return to my parents. I cannot live with her right now. I know I am not at a point where I would remain clean if I were around her and the drugs. I do not want to live that way anymore. When I am sober, it is extremely embarrassing to think about how I behave when I am using drugs. It is embarrassing to consider everything I have lost because of my addiction. Now I am going to have a child who is born a drug addict as well, and it does not get much lower than that. She is on a maintenance medication that is prescribed by her doctor and is the standard treatment option during pregnancy. Withdrawing from substances is dangerous for the baby, so they administer this maintenance medication, which does not get you high but prevents withdrawal symptoms. She wanted us to find a place and move in together again. I told her that I am not ready for that. I have just started a job. I suggested that maybe when the baby is born, the child can live with me and my parents while she works on truly getting clean. She stopped communicating with me for several days after that. Then she started messaging me expressing that she really wanted to use drugs again. She had been texting me throughout the day. Her messages felt like a cry for attention. She admitted she had taken some pills and had stopped taking her prescribed maintenance medication. She wanted me to come over and use drugs with her. I chose to ignore her. I just did not know what to do. I did not feel the urge to use drugs. The thought of getting high did not appeal to me at that moment, and I was primarily frustrated with her. Perhaps it was selfish, but I felt as though she was trying to sabotage my recovery. She called me late at night, and I answered because I started to feel guilty for not taking her more seriously earlier that day. She sounded more intoxicated than high. Her voice was heavily slurred, so I knew she was truthful about taking something. She said she did not feel well and could hear her heartbeat in her ears. It did not sound like how she usually sounds when high. She mentioned that she could not remember what she had taken. I instructed her to stop taking anything else and told her I was on my way. She hung up on me and did not answer when I tried to call back multiple times. When I arrived, I genuinely thought she was dead, but once I approached her and touched her, I realized she was breathing very shallowly. Her lips appeared gray. I called 911 and fortunately she began to regain consciousness and respond to me a little before the paramedics arrived, but they had to administer naloxone to her. When I was actively using drugs, I had naloxone, but I did not have it this time. She could have easily died. She was taken to the hospital and fortunately she is okay. As far as they can determine, the baby is okay too. An overdose and the administration of naloxone can cause miscarriage, or maybe at this point it could lead to stillbirth. This may sound terrible, but I think I felt a little disappointed when they said that everything seemed fine. I do not want anything bad to happen to the baby, but on the other hand, I think we are the bad influence that may harm the baby. It is not a suitable situation in which to bring a child into the world. The thing is that I still love her deeply. I cannot shake that feeling. It seems harder to let go of than the constant urge to get high. However, I do not understand how I can arrive at the realization that something must change if we are having a baby, and I genuinely want it to change. I want to be healthy again. I do not want to be this person who has wasted their life. I have had every opportunity and advantage, yet I have thrown it all away. I have no sob story or justification for why I started using drugs. I had a good life, a normal family, and so much privilege. I was simply foolish. I am not even the one who is carrying the baby, yet she does not seem to truly care or take her recovery seriously, even though she wants this baby desperately. I just do not know what I am supposed to do. As much as I love her, I wish I could go back 2 years and never meet her.